you geeks! Let's talk about something wholesome on the internet right now. And I can't think of anything more wholesome than the concept of this video that I've been saving for a rainy day. See, every so often, people have a lot of fun talking about the Muppet Stormlight Archive concept, which I enjoy on the Instagram, Tumblr, wherever it pops up, but I always think it's a weird fit. The Muppets have not actually adapted an epic fantasy work yet, and I don't know if they have the acting capacity for it. Maybe that's controversial, but I do know one Muppet-style show.
Have we got a show for you?
This home VHS series ran from the 90s to the late 2010s, as I count it. They started out with adaptations of Bible stories, but their canon grew to tell any kind of story they could think of, so long as it had a strong moral message, with their stories being acted out by a cast of talking fruits and vegetables. These profound actors would go on to grace the stage of retellings of Shakespeare's classic Hamlet and The Grapes of Wrath and other classic fairy tales and the pièce de résistance, VeggieTales Lord of the Beans. Now, given that this is such a strong acting base with such talented performances and writers, I think it is only fitting that they get the first shot at the Stormlight Archive, or as it should be called, the Gourdlight Archive. And here is my basic pitch for the plot of such an episode, followed by the casting choices I envision for such important roles. The basic parameters. Before I can sell you on the plot, I think you need to understand how long a VeggieTales episode usually is. For they actually, like Brandon Sanderson, kind of have the media growth problem or symptom of successful writing. Sure, their first episodes were as advertised.
Half an hour.
But later episodes, like Minnesota Cuke and the Quest for Samson's Hairbrush, by the way, Moose Lake does not actually have a children's museum. I checked. That episode, and of course, Lord of the Beans, run about 45 to 50 minutes in length, where their single theatrical release, Jonah, went a whole hour and 20 minutes. So, yeah, we're not getting all 5 books into this single episode, but I think we can get the general gist. This plot is going to focus mostly on the plots of books 1 and 2, so full spoiler warning through the end of Words of Radiance, but there might be by implication or allusion hints at what comes in the next 3 books, so watch at own risk. The next fundamental thing we must keep in mind for adapting a story into VeggieTales is we need it to have a strong moral value.
Oh, would ya look at that? Don't be selfish. That's a good one.
However, I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel with the Stormlight Archive, or specifically help others who cannot help themselves even if you don't like them. And the last parameter we have is that this story must be family-friendly. So you may assume that this means no war or violence, but VeggieTales began adapting Bible stories, and the overlap of Bible stories and war stories is significant. So it is no surprise that VeggieTales has worked into its greater established war, the ever-ongoing war,
The Great Pie War, to be exact.
and that war will be the background of our Gourdlight Archive. Of course, this war will now be taking place at the Shattered Plains, or rather called the Shattered Plates, because why not? Though, falling into the chasms might have to be replaced with something a bit more like the Islands of Perpetual Tickling that they used in Esther. They used that when adapting the Bible story as a stand-in for apparently the Babylonian habit of shish kebabbing people they did not like. Reading that story as a second grader was alarming. Anyway, the plot. To streamline this plot, we're going to take the basic structure of Words of Radiance, but begin when Kaladin saves Dalinar from some mishap on the plains. We're going to cut Sadeas, actually, because of timing, and casting is the only shortfall we have. Meanwhile, we meet Shallan and Jasnah inbound to the Shattered Plates, being hounded by the Ghost Bloods, who, very shortly, sweep Jasnah away in an avalanche of slushy, leaving Shallan to progress to the Shattered Plates alone. Meanwhile, back at the war camps, Kaladin and Adolin establish a rivalry. Syl tells Kaladin again to be helpful to those he does not like, and Renarin and R'lyeh get acquainted. Also, Dalinar is going to have a vision from the almighty Gord, who tells him to seek the center of the plates. Navani tells Dalinar that there is a legendary ancient treasure at the center of the plates, but she does not know the way. When Dalinar presents this goal to the other rulers in the war, Taravangian objects to this as folly and secretly hires Szeth-son-son-vallano to stop the Kholins by any means necessary, and promises to Szeth that this is what is needed to actually stop the war. This is, of course, a lie. Szeth decides to trap Adolin. Is it in a 4-on-1 duel? Is it a piano falling from the ceiling?
Why is there a piano on my cake?
I'm not really picky, provided that Szeth somehow captures Kaladin, who follows Syl's advice and helps, only to be imprisoned. With Kaladin out of the picture, Shallan makes it to the Shattered Plates and tells Dalinar and Navani that she and Jasnah found a map to the center of the Shattered Plates and that they can go forth and end the war as the Almighty wishes and possibly recover the treasure. Navani is going to be skeptical of this at first, but Wit's gonna show up with a bedraggled Jasnah, who confirms Shallan's story. Thus, the Kholins are making ready to go to the center. Adolin and Shallan meet and are cute together, while Wit disappears off to tell Kaladin a story, or rather, a silly song.
And now it's time for Silly Songs with Laddie, the part of the show where Laddie comes out and sings a silly song.
Now, standard procedure is that silly songs have actually nothing to do with the meta plotline of the VeggieTales episode, but they kind of blurred this with Elvish songs with Elvish in Lord of the Beans.
You should be ashamed of yourself. You're no elf. You're an Elvish impersonator.
And technically, Jonah didn't have a silly song. It just had a number of songs that were silly sprinkled throughout the episode. Besides, I think with the casting I have in mind for Wit, he can totally break the fourth wall of sorts and just introduce a silly song to Kaladin while he's in Storming Prison by Szeth. The Kholins depart for the center. Renarin and R'lyeh try to convince Dalinar to attempt peace talks with the listeners, but before they can make up their mind, the Ghost Bloods appear again and attack Jasnah and Shallan. Sensing weakness on the part of his opponents, Taravangian sends his army in to attack the listeners, and also sends for his secret weapon, Szeth-son-son-vallano. Szeth responds to the call, leaving Kaladin unguarded out on the edge of the plains. He knows that the Colons are in trouble and that a storm is brewing. Syl again tries to convince him that he must help others who cannot help themselves even if he dislikes them, and eventually, not that long, maybe a song, Kaladin decides to help the Colons and flies out to the center with Syl. I don't really intend to explain the mechanics of Spren, but Syl's totally there the whole time. Kaladin then makes his superhero landing at the center of the plains and once again helps Adolin fight Szeth, although he does more of the fighting since both of them can fly, let's just say. Meanwhile, Dalinar and Taravangian are fighting their way up to where Eshonai is holding her throne at the top of a very tall tower that also holds the relic of the almighty gourd. And from prior exposition dumps, we know that this almighty gourd grants the power of the almighty, which Taravangian has secretly been craving this entire time. He grasped for it and nothing happens. Meanwhile, Renarin and R'lain rescue Shallan, at least, from the Ghost Bloods. The three of them make it up to the top of the tower to explain to Dalinar and Eshonai, while Taravangian is just wigging out, that the true power of the Almighty is the ability to help others who cannot help themselves. So the listeners and the Alethi, in order to best honor the Almighty, should help each other rebuild in peace and not continue to make war. Meanwhile, Kaladin and Szeth are fighting around this tower, and Szeth sees that the Alethi and the listeners are making peace and that the only one who is currently threatening the gourd is his employer, Taravangian. He rushes in to separate Taravangian from the gourd, explaining that he is actually a member of a secret organization sworn to protect the truth of the gourd for all eternity. Thus, when he sees Taravangian is the only threat, he intervenes to hold him down while the others explain to them that the real power of the Almighty was the friends we made along the way. And somehow they all end up living happily ever after. Or something like that. With this plot in mind, we don't need to adapt any characters from Azamir or Thelena. I'm sorry, we're skipping Lift. It's sad, I know. And I admit this might more or less be the ending of Minnesota Cuke in this quest for Samson's hairbrush, but hey, Words of Radiance was basically Indiana Jones, so it works. Also, this version has flying asparagus and, as we'll see, sporks. Now for my dream casting. Kaladin. Or should we say Saladon, because Saladin has already been taken. Now, Saladon needs to be played by an actor who can be both a fierce warrior and beloved by the audience. And this is actually really easy, barely an inconvenience, to find in the VeggieTales lineup. For they already have one of their go-to male leads as a fierce warrior.
And this little fellow single-handedly stopped the advancing horde.
Who has also displayed his prowess at dealing with PTSD.
I'm sorry. I'm afraid he's lost his mind, sire.
Yes, I'm casting Junior Asparagus to play Saladon. He's already played Toto Baggy Pants in Lord of the Beans, so he's used to being saddled with fantastical responsibility. And he already has a built-in Lyran in his Cena. Not that they really have a role in this version, but it doesn't hurt. Most important of all, he can portray very real doubts about the moral of the story.
Mom, I need more toys!
while still maintaining an empathetic connection to the audience. And that, I think, is very crucial when playing Saladon. Syl. Okay, I'm not going to be able to come up with vegetable pun names for every one of these characters, especially since Dill is going to Dalinar. But let me know your thoughts on possible Syl vegetable names down in the comments. This might be a controversial casting since there was already a natural blue person in the VeggieTales lineup. However, she is not Syl material. And there is already a natural best friend in Laura Carrot for Junior Asparagus. However, Laura Carrot, in my recollection, is not like the best friend that ever pushes Junior to do the right thing. In fact, she's kind of egging him on always to make poor decisions.
Come on, guys! Sing the song! Everybody's doing it!
So I humbly suggest a complete relative unknown in Mirabelle from the classic Beauty and the Beat.
Everybody says I'm crazy to be talking with a girl like you.
Loving the Unlovable is her whole shtick, and she is voiced by American Idol winner Kelly Pickler. I think this was supposed to be a one-off kind of thing, but I mean, this is the Stormlight Archive, and we can totally bring her back in my dream casting to sing another song, possibly the silly song, or part of it anyway. Besides, she's a literal sweet potato, and if that just isn't the perfect veggie embodiment of Syl, then I don't know what is. Bridge 4. Okay, there's just not going to be enough time to get into all of Bridge 4's backstories in this adaptation, but if we cast the right actors, then all they need to do is appear and say one or two lines, and the audience will get it. So I start off with Pa Grape for Taft, as both are grouchy old men types.
In all my years, this has gotta be the sorriest lot of knights I have ever seen. You'll never be fit for battle.
Rock would be played by Scooter, the Scottish Carrot.
Name's Angus. I sell cruise tickets.
Horn Eaters are, of course, a combination of Polynesian and Scottish, so we have an actor that gets us halfway there, and he's really the only veggie who can pull off facial hair. The Lopin would be played by Jimmy Gord, who is loud and brash and known for commenting on how vegetables don't have arms.
How are we clapping?
I have no idea.
So I think it would be really funny if he kept on insisting that he only had one arm this entire time. Jimmy Gord is also always accompanied by his cousin, Jerry Gord, who would definitely be playing Huio, since both are known for being quiet, insightful, and rather good cooks that can bring everyone together.
Who wants a cookie?
Oh, we ain't had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days. I love a cookie.
Relaine. Now we must address which of the alternative races to veggies in the extended Veggieverse should we have play our listeners, since they are alien to humans at any rate. First choice, the penguins that worked in Mr. Nezer's toy factory that one time. Or the sporks who hunted Toto Beggy Pants in The Lord of the Beans. Both begin as minions of the adversary at the beginning, but there's something so fitting about having the antagonists of vegetables be eating utensils. Like, think of it. The Alethi march to the center of the Shattered Plains, where there is a giant oven that makes sporks and pies, and the horror!
Half spoon, half fork. Sports.
Besides, sporks aren't just forks. They have pointy ends, but they are also part spoon, which may come in handy for relaying at some point, not on screen, but if you know, you know. Adolin. This most lovable of the Colins needs to be an absolute golden retriever of a character, who is believable as nobility.
Otis, I've come to challenge you to a joust.
Fair with a blade.
Iricorn!
Oops.
Who can also learn an important lesson about friendship, or whatever. Obviously, this needs the profound acting prowess of Larry the Cucumber, who is also constantly paired with a quiet and more studious character, just as Adolin is. Renarin. Renarin in the early books is there mostly to be the bookish, quiet alternative to his loudmouth brother, just as Bob the Tomato is for Larry the Cucumber. Bob is also the voice of reason throughout most of the episodes, so casting him just conveys the gravitas of Renarin's role in preaching about making peace between the listeners and the Alethi.
What?
Yep, he gives us an even greater power than Samson's, the power to love our enemies, and even be kind to them.
Not that Bob is perfect all the time. He does hate the QWERTY song.
What we have learned applies to our lives today, and God had a lot to say in his book.
Larry, you know how I feel about that song.
Which in my eyes is a bigger character defect than anything Renarin has done ever. So I almost think that Bob would bring more subtlety and nuance to the Renarin Colin character. Dalinar. Or Dilinar! It works on so many levels because the actor I have in mind for Dalinar is a pickle, or perhaps a cucumber, I'm not sure. Mr. Nezer. Mr. Nezer shows up and you just know he's done some bad things. He may make some bad decisions, but in the end he is going to choose redemption for himself and for others. He's also a natural-born leader. He was the president of the initial chocolate factory, of course.
You mean I let them eat my bunnies, and in return they all want to play hooky?
Which was shorthand for Babylon, and then in Esther, he was the actual king of Babylon, and he also, again, is the CEO of the toy factory. Now, Mr. Nezer isn't just a good villain character, he's also a great mentor character. After all, he played Randolph in Lord of the Beans, and as soon as I saw Mr. Nezer playing Randolph, I was like, oh boy, this character is going to be so much more morally gray than Gandalf was. Yet he still gave, on the whole, great advice.
I said no matter what happens, don't laugh or smile. Didn't I say that?
Well, you didn't mention they were going to talk like that.
So, no-brainer, Mr. Nezer plays Dilinar. Navani. Before Navani was known for her scientific prowess and ability to bring people together, she was kind of more known for wanting that which she cannot have, specifically Dalinar. And this relates perfectly to the blue Madame Blueberry from the Veggieverse.
I'm so blue.
Which I'm pretty sure is the VeggieTales adaptation of Madame Bovary? It's French, and well, there's French literature lurking at the bottom of so many of Sanderson's works that I kind of think I should read that book before I do a character analysis on Navani herself. This is how the brain works, people. I hope you enjoy it. The Almighty. We're calling this the Stormlight Archives. So, of course, the Almighty needs to be played by a great big ginormous squash, Apollo Gord.
A great big squash just sat upon my hat.
Need I say more? Taravangian, or Carrot Vangian. He's the sort of scheming villain that is always kind of alongside but sort of opposed to the big brute sort of villain that is Dalinar or Mr. Nezer. And the Veggieverse naturally has one of these characters as well, Mr. Lunt.
After careful calculation, I've got just a ding.
The dual nature of Mr. Lunt and Mr. Nezer as joint villains is why Mr. Lunt would have also worked really well for Sadeas if we had time to include his arc. Still, Mr. Lunt can and has played solo villains, like in Minnesota Cuke and the Quest for Samson's Hairbrush.
Congratulations, Mr. Cube.
Professor Rattan.
Mr. Lunt probably also has displayed the greatest acting range in all of the Veggieverse. He's played a pirate who don't do anything, and he is the only Veggie actor to cross-dress. Admittedly, it was under duress.
It's embarrassing. No, you're ridiculous. It's tradition. In Shakespeare's day, all the women's roles were played by men. I think we're gonna get letters about this.
So he has that range to still be a twist villain. Maybe whatever happens at the beginning with Saladon rescuing Dalinar isn't overtly a betrayal, more of like happenstance, and then it's a surprise at the end. So, I think Mr. Lunt could really pull this off. Eshonai is also a spork, but maybe slightly more pointy? Szeth. Or rather, Szeth. Son-son-vallano, nameless of Skalovar. Why is he nameless when he clearly has a name? Well, I'm casting him as Scallion number 1, who notably...
What's your name?
They've never given me a name. I've been around since show 1 and I still don't have a name.
He's often seen with 2 other Scallion minions who together pose a posse of antagonists to whoever the main lead is. He can go toe-to-toe with Junior Asparagus or Larry or both on any given day, and has previously played the role of crafty bank robber. So ninja assassin is really just the next step up in his career. Shallan. Despite the frequent observation that vegetables don't have hair...
No hair? What will this mean? What will become of him? What will become of his hairbrush?
Petunia is the only naturally occurring redhead in the entire Veggieverse, and she is the natural love interest for Larry the Cucumber, who conveniently is already playing Adolin.
Wow, Nona sure has changed.
Sire, Nona is the short one.
Oh, well then, who's the tall, kind one?
That would be Petunia.
Although I don't know if she's ever slapped someone with a fish or sploshed them with a slushie, which is the equivalent of unaliving someone in the Veggieverse. She is used to playing someone with a tragic backstory, like the princess she played in Duke and the Great Pie War.
As you know, Gildersleeve and Ryan were neither invincible nor slightly less invincible.
Which could be suspicious if you haven't read the Book of Ruth, but she's much more than just the blushing damsel in distress. She is a member of the League of Incredible Vegetables.
Her name's Vogue. That high-tech suit can transform into just about anything, as long as it's fashionable.
And the intel expert in Minnesota Cuke. So Shallan would be a perfect opportunity for Petunia to combine her experience as a superhero, as a smart girl, into one excellent character. Yasna. Or maybe Yamsna? Now, VeggieTales is a very short list of characters who would be good queens. There's Miss Akmentha, who played a queen in Babysitter in Denial, and a queen runner-up to Esther herself. However, Miss Akmentha rockin' the Queen Amidala hairstyle and shoulder pads was unfavored by the Babylonian court because she wanted to institute social justice reforms.
I give a home to all the lost puppies.
And I think she can really build on this role to play it maybe a bit more somberly, or at least as somberly as someone can play while getting washed away in the first act by a giant avalanche of slushy. We know that she must be destroyed by slushy because it is the Ghostbloods doing the destruction. The Ghostbloods. Since the Ghostbloods as an organization are from Scadrial, and Scadrial is Cosmere, France, they have to be played by the French Peas. Perhaps we're cutting out Iyatil and Maraise and just instituting the French Peas as a collective unit. The French Peas are known for not letting people go where they want to go, as they stopped Josh with their big wall and plenty of slushy. So, stopping Yasna and Shallan on their way to the Shattered Plains is perfectly within their playbook. Wit. There is only one vegetable classy enough to play Wit, and that is Archibald Asparagus. Wit needs an actor who can command the screen and by his mere presence inform everyone that he is so much better than your typical run-a-vegetable, and that is the sort of posh pizzazz Archibald Asparagus delivers every time he is on screen.
Dear people, I bring you a message from the Lord. Oh, it's a message of encouragement.
Now, I can almost hear you in the comment section. We can't have Archibald Asparagus play Wit. He can't sing a silly song.
You can't say everyone's got a water buffalo and everyone does not have a water buffalo.
But lest you forget, Archibald Asparagus and the Silly Song Institution had a whole reunification arc in their first Jukebox episode where the radio station from Duluth, Minnesota brought an entire petition to Big Idea Productions insisting that Silly Songs with Larry be reinstituted, and it had one signature from Moose Lake, and that is where the joke comes from.
Moose Lake? Yes, Moose Lake. Wow, Moose Lake.
Afterward, he appeared as Larry's therapist in I Love My Lips, and really, Wit as a therapist, like, Archibald's got this covered. He also has a great singing voice as he displayed while singing most of the classy song with Larry, Larry's High Silk Hat.
He wore it high upon his head so proudly, a beautiful hat.
Ladies and cukes, I rest my case. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Check out my Patreon if you would like to support my work here. And I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks for watching. Bye!